Hello students, welcome to my business law lecture series. Today we are going to learn discharge of contracts, meaning and modes of discharge of contract from the fourth chapter of business law. Before moving further, let us see an example. Assume that Mr. Ashok made an offer for sale of car to Mr. Manohar and Mr. Manohar gave an acceptance to purchase it. But how long this contract will be valid? Maybe either after the purchase and sale of car. So after the sale of car, so this contract will get closed, right? And in the second example, assume that so this person is going to serve milk every day to your family. And again, you are going to give the amount to him every day. Second day, of course, the same thing repeats. After 1 year, of course, same thing repeats. But the thing is, how long it will remain? So he has to serve the milk to your family and you have to pay the amount. How long it will remain? So at any cost there should be an end, right? Like he should come out of the obligations to serving the milk to your family and you should come out of the obligations to pay the amount to this person. There should be an end to every contract. So this ending a contract or terminating a contract is called as discharge of contract. So that is the concept for today's class. The contract termination or the cancellation or the closing of a contract is called as discharge of contract. At the same time, the rights and obligations of contracting parties comes to an end on the discharge of contract. So there are various modes or the methods to cancel or to close a contract. And these modes are by performance, by mutual agreement, by impossibility of performance, by lapse of time, by operation of law, or by breach of contract. Let us see one by one in detail. The first one, discharge of contract by performance, which is mentioned under section 37. So here discharge of contract by performance means fulfillment or offer to fulfill by the parties to the contract of their respective obligations under the contract within the time, at the place, and in the manner prescribed. So here fulfillment of the contract. So discharge by performance, here performing the terms and conditions of a contract according to the description which is mentioned in the contract. By performing a contract, we can close our contract. And there are two categories of performance. The first one, actual performance, and the second one, attempted performance or offer of performance or tender. So here actual performance means when a party to contract has done what he promised to do in their contract. So if he has did whatever the activities mentioned in their agreements, so that is considered as actual performance. And in the second case, attempted performance or tender. So here, when a party to contract does not actually perform the contract, but he offers to perform his obligation and the other party doesn't accept the offer. For example, in this case, so Mr. Ashok offered to sell his car and Mr. Manohar acceptance given to purchase it. So here in this particular case, so once Ashok sold the car or once Manohar purchased the car, so the contract will be get closed. And this is an example for actual performance. And offer to performance or tender means Ashok is ready to sell his car, but Manohar didn't give his acceptance. So in that situation, so it's considered as a tender. So one party is ready to complete the contract and another party doesn't accept the offer. So in such situation, it's considered as tender. In both the cases, like actual performance or under attempted performance, we can close the contract or we can discharge a contract. And the second method is by mutual agreement. So here, as the name indicates, all the parties to contract decides to give consent mutually to close the contract. So if all the parties to contract agrees to close the contract, it's considered as by mutual agreement. And there are so many methods under mutual agreements. So novation, alteration, recession, remission, waiver, and merger. Let us see one by one. So in this case, novation. Novation means substituting a new contract for an existing contract. So here, assume that Mr. Kiran wanted to sell his Celerio car to Mr. Arun, and Arun is ready to purchase the Celerio car for rupees 6 lakh. So it is the first contract. After that, so again Mr. Arun is ready to sell his Wagoner car for 5 lakh, and Arun is ready to purchase the same car. So it's a contract 2. So instead of contract 1, so they have undergone for contract 2. So they are going to substitute the first contract by the second contract. So that is considered as novation. By mutual agreements, so they can substitute the first contract by the second contract. So that is considered as novation. And the second method is alteration. So in this case, change of one or more terms of the contract. So here, Mr. Arun is ready to sell his car and Mr. Kiran is ready to purchase the car for 5 lakh rupees. After that, they are going to change one or more terms of the contract. Instead of for 5 lakh rupees, he has increased the price of car to 6 lakh rupees. So change in the price of car or change in one terms of a contract. So for that reason, it's considered as alteration. And for this change, both the parties should give their agreement, should give their consent. So it is considered as alteration. And the third one, recession. So recession means cancellation. So cancellation of all or some of the terms of contract. So here Arun is ready to sell his Celerio car. Kiran is ready to purchase the Celerio car for rupees 5 lakh. And this 5 lakh rupees also includes an insurance of rupees 1 lakh. But later they cancelled this term of a contract. So ಈ conditions ಅನ್ನು cancel ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಇನ್ಶೂರೆನ್ಸ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಅನ್ನು. So for that reason it's considered as recession. They have cancelled one terms of a contract. So for that reason it's considered as recession. And the fourth one, remission. So remission means acceptance of lesser fulfillment of the contract. Again, the same example, Arun and Kiran and sale and purchase of the car. Again for 5 lakh rupees. But here, which includes 2 years or 40,000 kilometers of warranty. But later time, Kiran sacrificed or this warranty or he has given acceptance for lesser fulfillment of the contract. Instead of 2 years plus or 40,000 kilometers of warranty, he accepted the term 2 year or 10,000 kilometers of warranty. So here acceptance of lesser fulfillment of the contract. Instead of 40,000 kilometers, he gave an acceptance for 10,000 kilometers of warranty. So that is considered as remission. And the next one, waiver. So here, giving up of a right under a contract. So Arun is ready to sell his car, made an offer for 5 lakh rupees, and Kiran gave an acceptance to purchase the car for 5 lakh rupees. After that, Kiran requested Arun not to proceed with the sale since he can't pay. So, since he can't pay for the car, he requested Arun to stop the further proceedings. So, here waiver giving up of a right under a contract. So, after giving acceptance, so here Kiran is having the right to purchase the car from Arun, but he is going to sacrifice his rights. So, for that reason, it's considered as waiver. And the last one, merger, an inferior right accruing to the party merged with a superior right under the same or any other contract. So here merger, you should remember, an inferior right merged with the superior right, and after merging this inferior rights will not continue. So Arun is ready to sell the car, but here sale of car under lease agreements. So Kiran is paying lease amount to Arun regularly. So in this case, the contractual capacity is lesser and lessee. But after paying the amount or after paying the final amount to Arun, so the contractual capacity will become seller and buyer. So here inferior rights of lesser and lessee will be translated to purchaser and the seller. So this is considered as inferior right merged with the superior rights. And these inferior rights will not continue. So lesser and lessee contractual relationships will not exist once it converted into purchaser and seller. So by mutual agreements, we have various categories to discharge the contract: novation, alteration, recession, remission, waiver, and merger. And the third one, by impossibility of performance. There are various situations wherein which it will become impossible to complete the contract, and these impossibilities and the reason for these impossibilities are discussed here. The first one, destruction of subject matter. So assume that, so here Ashok is ready to sell his car. He made an offer to sale of his car. Manohar has given his acceptance to purchase it. But after the offer and acceptance, an accident took place and the car was completely destroyed. So, in that situation, it will become impossible to continue with the contract. It will become impossible to sell the same car to Ashok. So, for that reason, the contract will be discharged. And the second reason for impossibility was failure of the object of a contract. In this case, so object represents the purpose of the contract. So, for example, you are going to purchase some hair oil with the intention to grow your hair more and more. In that situation, if it fails to fulfill the purpose of the contract, so you can discharge the contract or you can cancel the contract. So, object represents the purpose of contract. And the third one, death or incapacity of the promiser. So, sale and purchase of a car, offer and acceptance is over. After that, death or incapacity of any one of the party will lead to closing contract. Change in laws or government intervention. Assume that, so this offer and acceptance is for a petrol car, but after some time government interviewed and passed a bill for uh, banning all the petrol car. So in that situation, so you cannot proceed with the same contract. So you cannot proceed with the purchasing petrol car because all the petrol cars are banned by the government. Outbreak of war. So assume that you are intended to purchase a car from Japan, and at the same time a war declared between India and Japan. In that situation, you cannot purchase the car from Japan or any other country. So, if a war declared between the nations, you cannot proceed with the contract with an enemy country. So, these are all the reasons for impossibility. And the next one, kinds of impossibility. So, there are various kinds. Impossibility of performance of the contract known to both the parties to contract. So while entering into contract, both the parties are aware that the contract cannot be performed. And the second one, impossibility of performance, but which is not known to parties to contract. They were innocent regarding the impossibility of contract. The third one, impossibility of performance of the contract known to only one of the parties to contract, and another party is innocent regarding the impossibility. And the fourth one, impossibility of performance arising after the formation of contract. So in the first three situations, the impossibility of performance is at the beginning or at the time of entering into contract, but in the fourth situation, impossibility arises only after the formation of contract. So let us see some examples. Impossibility known to both the parties to contract. Suppose some person, so he told to bring a life to a dead body. So in that situation, so both the parties are aware that the contract cannot be performed or it is impossible to perform the contract. So in such situation, it is known to both the parties to contract. The second one, impossibility of performance of the contract but unknown to both the parties to contract. So this Anil and Sunil entered a contract regarding some goods which is yet to came from a ship, but they were unaware of the fact that so uh, while coming the ship was exhausted. So in that situation, they were unaware of the fact that so they cannot continue with the contract. So they were innocent regarding the impossibility of contract. If the goods lost in the marine, so they cannot proceed with the contract. So they cannot. So the contract is impossible to perform. And the next one, impossibility of performance known to only one of the parties to contract. It's more dangerous because one party is aware of the fact that they cannot proceed with the contract and another party is innocent. Suppose so Mr. B promises to marry a girl called A. So in that situation, the contract is over, but only Mr. B knows that he cannot proceed with the contract because he already married another girl called X. So, in that situation, the impossibility of performance is known only to this person and not to this lady. So, she is innocent of the fact that the contract cannot be performed. So, it is considered as impossibility of performance of the contract but known to only one of the parties to contract. And the fourth one, impossibility of performance arising after the formation of contract. So here, Mr. B entered a contract with Miss C to marry her. But after some time, so Mr. B got mad. In that situation, so this lady cannot continue with the agreement. So which is not known to both the parties at the time of entering into contract, but after the agreement, the contract become impossible to complete. So for that reason, it is impossibility of performance arising after the formation of contract. So these are all the categories of impossibility of performance. So here we have completed discharge of contract by performance, by mutual agreement, and by impossibility of performance. And the next one, by lapse of time. So, lapse of time, we can close or discharge a contract. So Indian Limitation Act 1963 prescribes the period within which existing rights can be enforced in a court of law. So after the specified period, the contract cannot be enforceable. So if you consider non-performing assets of a bank, so there is a specified limit within which the bank has to take actions to recover the amount. So after that, so they cannot continue the contract. The contract will be closed. And the fifth situation, by operation of law. So in some situation, law states that the contract has been discharged. So in that, by death of a party to contract. And the second one, by merger, by merging inferior rights with the superior rights, the law states the contract will be discharged. And the third one, by insolvency of any one party to the contract, and by unauthorized changes in the terms of contract. So here one party is unaware of the alterations in the terms and conditions. So in that situation, the law states for the termination or discharge of contract when rights and liabilities vested in the same person. In all these situations, the contract will get closed by operation of law. And the sixth one, by breach of contract. So in this situation, when a party to contract fails to perform his obligations without a lawful reason, so this is going to call as breach of a contract. So here breach indicates breaking. So breaking the terms and conditions of a contract. So here right of action for damages in favor of aggrieved party. The aggrieved party can claim for damages for breach of contract. So here, so this person has to serve the milk to your family for the amount received. So in any case, if he fails to serve the milk without any lawful reason, in such situation, the contract is said to be breach of contract. So any one person fails to perform the terms and conditions of the contract without a lawful reason, so that is considered as breach of contract. So there are two categories of breach of contract. The first one, actual breach of contract, and another one, anticipatory breach of contract. Actual breach of contract, so that is at the time of performance due or during the performance of the contract, if any person fails to perform his terms and conditions in the contract, that is considered as actual breach of contract. In case of anticipatory breach of contract, any one of the party to contract declares in advance regarding his regarding his intention of not performing a contract. So in such situation, we are going to call it as anticipatory breach of contract. So that is all regarding breach of contract. So we are going to learn this breach of contract in detail in the next class. So in today's class, we have learned discharge of contract as well as modes of discharge of contract. So modes are by performance, by mutual agreement, by impossibility of performance, by lapse of time, by operation of law, and by breach of contract. By all these methods, we can close or terminate or discharge a contract. Let us see some questions to check your understanding. The rights and obligations of the contracting parties comes to an end is called breach of contract, discharge of contract, quasi-contract, or none of the above. I hope you are able to guess the answer. That is B, discharge of contract. The termination of contractual relationship is called breach of contract, discharge of contract, quasi-contract, none of the above. Thus, the answer is B, discharge of contract. Contract cannot be discharged by performance, lapse of time, impossibility of law, or none of the above. Here, contract cannot be discharged by, but the answer is D because A contract can be discharged by all these methods. Say yes or no to the statement. By outbreak of war, contract between these countries will end. The answer is yes. Because outbreak of war, we cannot proceed with a contract. You can say yes or no to the statement. By lapse of time, contract will come to an end. Of course, the answer is. Thank you for watching and happy learning.